This is the T.A.R Life Podcast from Team Anderson Realty, where we talk about all things real estate, give a behind-the-scenes peek of the adventures of buyers, sellers, and agents. Get tips and tricks as a home buyer, a home seller, or listing agent. We put the real in real estate. And now your host, top producing mega agent, Erica Anderson.
Thank you for joining us. This is our second episode of the T.A.R Life Podcast. And we obviously, Melody, Tate, and I live to tell the story of what our skydiving experience was. And I have something that I want to go into before we talk about that. But we have Jenny Cohen. She is one of the top producers at Team Anderson Realty. We have the beautiful Melody Tate, and then we have Eleanor Thorne. She and her husband are one of our preferred lenders, and we've been working with them, I think, over a decade now. So, yeah, no,
Amazing.
it absolutely was over a decade. Yeah, so that's really cool. So, Melody, Jennifer, and I, Jennifer's not here, we went skydiving on Sunday.
New Year's Day.
Yes, and I was told today that my aunt was thrown out of an airplane. And I remember my mother telling me a story about her father was skydiving and somebody's parachute didn't open. And I had forgotten that story until I told her that we were jumping in a couple days. And she was like, this is ridiculous. You know, she was scared and worried for me. But anyways, I posted about the experience, and my uncle said, you know, your grandfather pushed your aunt, Laura, out of a plane. And I was like, well, I need to call her. So before we came here, I called her and I said, so did you go skydiving? And she was like, well, yes. And I said, okay, like you were tandem, right? You were connected to your father. And she was like, no, I was not. And I go, what? And I go, well, how old were you? And she said, well, he died when I was 11. So I know I was definitely very young. And I think I was probably like eight-ish.
Wow. That's insane.
Yes.
It's like my son's age.
Yeah. I know. And I go, whoa. I'm like, this is like, why is this the first time that I've heard about this? And she was like, well, he was an instructor. And she was like, and it was a balls to the wall. You are going to do it all the way, right away. Like you're not going to, they practiced a little bit on some sort of line where they jump off, but I don't think it was anything crazy. And so I guess they did that a couple times. He actually taught her how to pack her own chute. Mm-hmm. Now, she didn't pack it, but she learned. And then he took her up in the airplane, and she said that all she can remember was clutching to the airplane and screaming as he threw her off.
No way.
And then he jumped after her because I think it was one of those, you know how we could, in theory, do a course, jump out of the airplane and have two instructors next to us, and then they would kind of monitor us. I don't think you can do that at between 8 and 10. Oh, no. But you know, this was the 70s. So, you know, I feel like everything, Florida in the 70s, anything goes. So she said that all she remembers was she was sobbing. And I'm like, how did you steer? Like, how did you steer your parachute at that age? And I'm like, I guess your just instincts kick in. And I guess she had enough training to survive. Yeah. But she that was the first time she had ever flown on an airplane, and it never landed. She jumped out of it. And then the time, my uncle said the time that she actually flew in an airplane where it landed, then it was the next time she was ever on one, and that was when she got married. And I was just like, wow. And she was like, yeah, you know, your grandfather taught us to scuba dive at a very young age. She was like, we swam with sharks, like we did. A lot of stuff. And so I was like, okay, well, that makes our experience seem like super mild.
Yeah, right? Very mild.
So we're going to lead into our story. So we left off with Melody was so gracious to provide me a birthday gift last year for my birthday. And then Jennifer and I thought it'd be wonderful if we gifted her the experience as well, because we felt like she really needed to check that off her bucket list.
Okay, they called me after hours, and I had a few glasses of wine and was like, sure.
She was fine.
And then the next day I was like, what did I agree to? Because my phone's going off with all these texts. I'm like, so I was thinking about it. I've never been like rode a roller coaster, so I definitely don't want to jump out of a plane.
She's like, I'll watch you.
I will like support you
when you agreed to it.
I was like,
Way
are
too
you a
much.
woman of your word or are you not?
like, you are doing this. And I'm like, okay.
I'm scared of heights. And I know I'm terrified, but I wanted to conquer this. And I remember a couple times I kind of woke up as I fell asleep, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to be jumping out of an airplane at 13,516
hours counted."
I know. And so I just think of Melody. So we drove together, and I remember Melody's face. Like you could tell, she's like, I can compartmentalize my feelings, and like I'm really good at like controlling how I feel. But her eyes said,
I'm scared.
Her eyes were like,
oh, the adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So they take us in, and it felt very well run. We had this wonderful video that says like, make sure you need you have to have a perfect plane. You have to have a perfect pilot, a perfectly packed chute, a perfect instructor,
the perfect day
conditions,
which we did
to have a perfectly safe jump. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like, perfection in life is impossible.
Right. Year's Day was absolutely beautiful, and you couldn't have picked a better day.
Oh my gosh, it was amazing.
It was warm.
It was warm, and we had layers, and we didn't even really need it. But
so, tell me, Melody, how you were feeling. So you loaded on the plane, and Melody and Jennifer were back, so they jumped last.
First, we decided before we got there what order we were going to jump in. So we had this long debate about.
You didn't pick straws?
Nope.
I know you should have.
We don't. We talk about everything. So we were like, this is what we're going to do. So we decided Erica was going to, I was going to jump first.
Yeah.
Okay. Because apparently you want somebody underneath of you. It just makes you feel better.
And she wanted to rip the Band-Aid off.
I was
like, throw myself off. And I was like, I like that. So I'll go
Erica
second.
was second, and nobody wanted to go last, right? So Jennifer was like, I'll go last. So we had this plan the whole way. But I feel like I just put it out of sight, out of mind. Like even getting onto the plane, I didn't think about what I was doing. Yeah. I was like, I'm just getting on a plane. This is totally normal. It's
another plane. I wish.
The guy, the staff there, I mean, they say that 1% of the population skydives. And if it's like that 1% has to be probably the coolest 1% because they are happy.
True. Totally.
And they're this guy, this was his 7,608 jump.
Your guy?
My guy.
Wow.
And he writes it down. And he was probably just as excited as he was 7,000 before that.
I think he loved that she was so nervous because I feel like he was so almost military-like. Like he was awesome.
But very laid back. But it's super excited for you, walked you through everything. But when we were walking up to the plane, he was kind of like, that leash that you can hold on to your kids with. He essentially had a hold of me. So he walked me through all their sense of humors are just
hilarious.
Yeah. They're like, I did well this morning. How long have you been jumping? Well, this morning I jumped and I did really well. So they said I could come back this afternoon and jump with somebody. So they made light of the situation. So yeah.
I told my guy, I said, if I say no, then just do it. Don't ask me.
Yeah.
If anybody's like, are you ready? Do you want to no, I don't want to think about it. And he goes, well, that's okay because in an airplane, no sounds like yes anyway. So I was like, great.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, I ended up boarding last.
Yes.
So I was like, it looks like I'm going to be the first one. And my guy was like, yeah, that's the plan. And I was like, all right. And I mean, I was right next to the door. And when you're taking off, you're facing the tail of the plane. So you kind of feel like you're going out of the airplane. Yeah. So I'm holding on to the bar where the door opens that,
and it's just like a plastic piece.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
no.
not really a door.
And I'm I'm buckled in by one little strap and and he was like, it's like an airplane. He goes, if I'm unconscious or the plane unconscious and the plane's going down, well, then, you just kind of and I'm like, oh, yeah, because I'm not strapped to anybody. So if the plane goes down, I don't have the parachute. So I'm going to put his unconscious body on me and I'm going to throw him off the plane. And I don't know. I'm going to figure this out. But anyway, so tell us how. I guess I'll go first because I was the first one that jumped. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, when are you going to strap me in? Because I really want to be strapped in. Like, strap me onto your parachute, because when I'm not on a parachute, I feel like I could just fall and there's nothing that's going to save me. So he was like, oh, about 9,500 feet. I will strap you in. And I was like, oh, okay. Like right before we jump out.
Why are you waiting so
Yeah.
long?
And he was like, so he strapped it. And I was looking at Melody's husband and Austin. And so he decided to jump too. And I was like, Austin, like, will you like check to make sure that it's actually connected? And so my guy thought it'd be hilarious to unconnect me.
Oh my God.
Like, and I was like, no, I'm like, put the back on immediately. And so he did, and he tightened me up, and I was like, good. Like, I feel good and tight. And so once we hit 9,500 feet, getting to cruising altitude, which is 13,500 feet, that's the jump altitude, seemed really fast. It was like, it took a while, like 10 minutes to get to 9,500 feet. So all of a sudden you see the lights and it's like, door opens. There were 3 non-tandem jumpers, including my photographer, my videographer that jumped. And so they're like, the first guy was like holding on to the bar. And I guess he was trying to get momentum to throw himself off. So he was like, the guy behind him was like, pushed him out. And I was like, wow, it was intense. Like, oh my gosh. So, and I'm just like, I remember I closed my eyes. So they want you to have your head back and you're holding your gear. And so I was like, I'm going to open it once we've jumped, because when you've jumped, there's no hesitation. So I let myself like go with the flow. But the one interesting fact is the mind doesn't really understand heights when it looks like a map. That's what I've read. So it is true. Like my fear of heights it wasn't the fear of heights. It was the fear of the parachute not opening. And I don't love that drop when you drop down, but I was assured by Jennifer that you really don't feel it at all. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And so like anyways, it was like 1, 2.
Hey, you said good.
I know. You jump out. So you jump out. And I was like, wow, I feel like a rock that just got thrown out of an airplane. Yeah. Like that drop was real and it was really intense. And I was like,
but like, not like butterflies.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Oh, it's more of like, I'm now going 180 miles an hour.
I think it's literally your stomach.
It's moving. Just you don't really have, because the plane is already, from what I'm understanding, the plane is already moving, right?
Okay.
And so you don't really feel that butterfly feeling, apparently, when you ride a roller coaster. So it's just the fall.
Until you hit 120 miles an hour.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So once you hit that cruising, dropping altitude of 120 miles an hour, it really stops. Mm-hmm. And you feel like you're in a wind tunnel. And that's when they have you stick your arms out. And I remember being like, wow, first of all, it's very cold here. Like I realized that I did not dress appropriately for a winter skydiving jump, but it wasn't like that bad. And then I also realized they were like, smile big, really big, or your face looks weird going 120 miles an hour. Yeah, so I was like smiling big, but then I was like, but my mouth is getting very dry. And I was like, do I keep it closed or do I open it?
It's stuck open.
I know, I'm like, so anyways, then I'm like, wow, this is a really long free fall. Like if 1 minute feels like so much longer. And then he went like 3, 2, 1 to my camera guy. He pulled the cord. And when you don't go up, but you hit, like you slow down so much that it stops you in midair. Yeah.
Almost.
Oh, yeah. And it's like, it looks like you're going up, but you're not. You're just stopping, really, essentially. Yeah. And then right when they do that, they loosen your gear a little bit.
That has to be the scariest thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, keep me tight.
Yeah. Tighten me back up. All of a sudden, I feel like, those baby things that they hang on you and your legs. That's essentially what you're feeling. Like you feel like at any time it could just that would probably be the scariest part for me.
I would prefer a little bit of a tighter experience.
Yeah, keep me close.
Yeah,
keep me close.
Okay, like if I don't say anything, like I feel wonderful. Yeah. Like don't loosen me up. Like I think Jennifer was so loose that when she landed, her gear, her shoulders came off of her.
Oh wow,
mine did not. And so I feel like mine was just loose enough to where I was a little uncomfortable, but it's just I wasn't used to it. But hers is probably, in my opinion, a little too loose.
Yeah. When you go to land, I think that's why, because you essentially have to like put your legs up so they can fold you up and scooch down on your bottom.
Was this not the ultimate? I call it a trust fall with God.
It was definitely a trust
team building
It
exercise.
was definitely a trust fall. I've never
Jenny's
felt...
going to go next.
No, like talking about this, you're giving me anxiety right now. I'm like, all right.
I think everyone
So
should
tell
know.
us what you were thinking and how you felt. So you watched me go.
I watched her fall from the plane from my window. And I was like,
No, God.
Wasn't going. It was fine.
like literally, I watched her fall out of my window. So I was second to the last. So, I mean, it was my guy was really great, super professional, and I felt really
Were you
safe
looking
with him.
down or were you not looking down when you jumped out?
I wouldn't look down because I kept hearing somebody say, "Don't look down."
Okay.
So I didn't look down. I tried to look across, and I was afraid that I would be sick.
Could you imagine though getting sick and
Oh,
that's
what
what
happened.
happened. We asked about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. We asked about it. So that's what I was afraid of. I was like, I'm going to get sick on this guy. So I just kept looking forward. And then he told me to like hold, the parachute. And I was like, do I have to? And he's like, yeah, but my hands were getting super cold. I do remember my hands were probably the only thing that was really cold. And eventually he took it back. But it was good. And then we landed. And as soon as I've never felt adrenaline before. Again, I don't ride roller coasters.
Yeah,
So I don't really know what this feels like. So
It's a new drug for Melody.
it's kind
Are
of
you
crazy.
hooked?
No,
You do it again?
absolutely not. Absolutely not. So I get up. I'm like, I stand up, and he like fist pumps me, and he's like, "How's it?" And I was like, "It's great." And the guy comes over. He's like, "Would you do it again?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
No, she hesitated and she looked at him like, "Are you kidding me?" And
I
then
wonder
she
what
was
your
like,
feelings
"Yeah."
are.
She was like, "Yeah." Like the most unconvincing, yeah. Like, I know I have to say this, but like, hell
I'm
no.
going to Disney with
Hell
me.
no, yeah.
No.
Right. No, I've never felt like that. I mean, I'm so glad that I did it.
Do you feel like a little bit more like badass
I feel like I've
for
lost.
conquering that?
I've lost every day this week. I'm like, what day is it today?
I feel like I'm shocked that she did it.
Yeah.
Because I was like, all right, we are going to peer pressure the hell out of her.
Oh, and she did. Oh, and then I was like, I guess I could go up there and then like chicken out like last minute. And Eric was like, there's nothing worse than getting up there and then chickening out and not doing it.
No.
So then it's like that peer pressure. I'm
Yeah.
like, I gotta do this. But
I'm all about peer pressure if it's safe.
Yeah.
And so remember, even though skydiving is risky, it is literally, it's 1 in every 500,000 jumps. You're more likely to be struck by lightning.
truly, they were the staff was amazing. Everybody was happy. Everybody was in a great mood. Everybody high five, whatever jump it was for you. They were really, really awesome. It's out in like Lewisburg. I'm glad that I did it. I don't think I'd want to do it again. And I was like, my father-in-law does
Never
it out
say
in like
never.
over in the coast. Like he's like, there's nothing like jumping over water. He's like, come down here and jump over the water. And I'm like, I think I'll pass. But I'm like, I definitely, if I ever did do it, like I would always probably want to do it in the country because I know there's so many like safety protocols.
Well, yeah, they had they're special devices. I forget. They're called ASH or I don't know, something like that. But anyways, they're expensive. But this company has them attached to their parachutes so that, let's say your instructor gets injured or he's unconscious,
Yeah.
then, or there's an issue, the parachute, the reserve deploys at 2,000 feet. So you have a little bit, you
little
can
safety
still
net.
spiral to your
Yeah.
death. You could still plummet. I mean, I read stories after we jumped that I was like, I'm really glad I didn't read these before.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm so glad that we went.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's not going to be the only adventurous thing that we do together.
Well, I was going to say, now you have to watch what you gift Erica because she's going
I
to
will
gift it right
never
back.
gift her anything that I don't want.
And I will. I will gift Melody things that I want to do.
I'm like, do you want to go to the spa for your birthday?
I will say though that in life, I find personally that some things doing it over and over again, like my husband's always like, oh, let's ride the boat every weekend. And I'm like, to me, like, it's a little boring. I like a new experience.
Yeah.
And I'm not addicted to skydiving by any means, but having something that is just different and unique is something that I'm always craving. And I don't have to like put my life in danger. But like we want to go to the Amazon next. That's probably going to be something that we'll be talking about this year. And so that's going to be a cool experience. And so
Amazing, yeah.
no, like we just here at the firm, all of our agents seem to do some fun and interesting things. But anyways, let's go into the topic today. This is the real estate topic. And so we're going to talk a little bit with Eleanor about what are buyers in this market? So it's now 2023. We've had, the last part of 2022 where you've kind of been evaluating what people have been getting in terms of loans. Let's talk about what they've been choosing and why. And then we're going to finish with some stories. We're not going to name any names, but some stories over the years that we've been working where a buyer has not followed a lender's advice, or perhaps they used a lender that did not give them advice, and see what they said.
So what we're seeing right now, that was amazing stories about skydiving. I know some of our customers feel like they are skydiving when they're going through this process. Like, okay, I'm doing this.
It's emotional.
And it is a trust fall, right? They trust you guys to be their tandem partner.
And how many jumps, like as a lender, you want to have a lot of jumps under your belt.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
But I can see the segue perfectly, having talked to so many people over the course of the last decade, why this is such an important thing. What we're seeing customers look at right now primarily are buy downs.
Right.
We're seeing customers that want to get a rate of 6%, but they're starting at 4%. Then the next year they go to 5%. If interest rates change somewhere after that, then that money that they have set aside into kind of an escrow or a savings account, that money is then applied to their mortgage. So it buys the mortgage down.
Oh, that's good. For how long of a period of time can you buy it?
Typically, it's 2 years. The seller has to pay that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're seeing situations where the seller is paying this as closing costs as opposed to getting cheaper purchase price on it. But it really helps with the affordability of the house. And we're seeing more and more people who are doing 2-1 buy downs. The other thing we're seeing are people who don't want to put any money down on a house. So the first-time home buyers particularly are taking advantage of USDA loans.
Yeah. I haven't seen that in a while.
Well, we're doing USDA loans with NC Housing is paying
What's the
closing
maximum
cost.
purchase price for USDA right now?
There's not a maximum.
I mean, it's limited by income, though, right?
By income.
Yeah.
So primarily it's somewhere close to 400,000.
Okay. Well, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
What's the cost average for the buy down?
2.6%. For
Okay.
a 2-1 buy down, it's 2.6%.
I just had a builder do a buy down for a buyer instead of offering concessions, which is great,
Yeah,
in the long
and
run.
seeing it offered like before you even go under contract, it's something that the sellers to kind of bring some motivation.
Yeah, for listings,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But the affordability factor is what's so high. So you're actually making payments at 4%, and most people can afford payments at 4%.
And they can afford it at 6%, but
Yes.
it's just a mental thing,
It's
right?
a mental
It
thing
is.
right now.
And
It's like
most people
easing
are getting-
into that payment, right? Worst
Right.
case.
Right, but they also know that they're going to get raises.
Oh,
Right.
that's true.
So you buy a house now, 2 years from now, you will have had 2 years worth of raises,
Mhm.
which will
Oh, that's a
easily
good point. I
cover
didn't think about that.
whatever you're going to end up with as a note rate, even if you don't refinance.
Can you
be
refinance
fine.
anytime in that 2 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if rates went down in a year and a half, there's no penalty for you.
No, there's no penalty.
I bought a house with Steve, Eleanor's husband, and I refinanced it 6 months after we closed because rates were a whopping 4.25 when I
Right.
closed. And I was like, whoa. Now it's in the 3s.
Mhm.
And it was no issue at all, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's a
So
good
what
idea.
we'll likely see as interest rates go forward in the next 3 or 4 years, we're probably going to bottom out about 4%. So 4%, 4.5%, that's going to be your normal with a normal economy that's in pretty good shape.
So you think we'll actually go back down into the 4s at
I
some
do.
point?
I do.
When do you if you don't have a crystal ball, but like let's just say a guess, because you've been in the business, you and Steve, for what, 30 plus years?
Yes.
Okay.
I would guess that before the middle of 2024, we will
Okay.
head down into the 5s and migrate down into 4. And we should hit 4.5% by the election.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's
great.
fantastic.
That's doable, right?
Right,
It's
that's
much
it's
more
much-
doable. than-
absolutely. And that's another thing when you're talking to the buyers too, of marrying the house and not the rate.
Yeah.
And this is a great thing.
You're
You
dating that rate.
Exactly. And you can refinance and get the house you want, walk away and think about, oh, should I buy the house? Should I, is there more inventory in the ground? That sort of thing. And then if rates go down, then absolutely.
Yeah, why would you pay somebody else's mortgage?
Absolutely.
agree.
And
Yeah.
home prices are only going to go up.
They
They're
are,
not
right.
even especially in
decreasing.
this area.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The Raleigh, Durham, I mean, the state of North
Jobs,
Carolina overall. Yeah.
and there's so many people people have to buy and sell. So
people are still, I mean, I've got 5 homes ready to sell this month for listing. So sellers are still selling, and it's a good opportunity for buyers to come back into the market. Again, when you have a good lender that can explain the buy down process. Are you seeing people do ARMs?
There are some ARMs. Most Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, meaning the conventional conforming lenders, are not offering those programs. If you think about it, the Fed wants to have us with higher interest rates to slow the economy down. So they don't want us to be able to offer ARMs. So ARM products are not generally available right now at lower rates, which is kind of counterintuitive to most of us. But as you think about what the Fed is trying to do, we need the higher rate.
Can you buy down like a second home, or is that not an option?
If you're purchasing the home and the seller is willing to help.
Okay, so this can be your primary residence.
It can't work on an investment
property.
Cool. Well, that's good to know. People that want to buy at the beach or the mountains, like that is an option. And so if somebody's motivated, a seller, instead of reducing the price,
absolutely,
they can come off, by paying some, I guess it would be considered closing costs, right?
That's correct.
It's 2.6 of the loan amount.
Right.
Okay.
All about educating the buyers and letting them know it's
that
not
is it,
so
and the
scary.
sellers.
It doesn't have to be intimidating.
That is true. I think every listing agent should explain that buyers may ask for this, and this is why.
Yeah.
And buyers need to understand that when it's written, fixed rates starting at 4%, that's typically how you'll see it written. Is it's a fixed rate mortgage because it is, but the rate is starting at 4.5%.
With that in mind, let's go into some stories. We're going to start with Jenny, and then we'll go to Mel and Eleanor. Well, I'll finish, and then Eleanor can finish. I'll finish the agent side. But tell us about, so when buyers are buying a home, now this does not have to be a first-time home buyer.
Yeah.
Sometimes people just haven't purchased in a while, and they're not thinking about things, but whether they're just not reminded by the lender or not educated by the lender. Have you had an experience where a buyer did something that, whether you're in the listing side or the buy side, that interfered with the closing? And what was that story?
Absolutely. I mean, everyone runs into that.
What was the one thing that stands out?
I had a buyer and we were a week out from closing. Everything's clear to close. We're good to go. And I get a call and they're so excited telling me about how they have a new job.
Oh, no.
And they're so excited. They don't think it should be a problem because it's a higher salary. But instead of having a fixed income, it's now commission-based. And that's not calculated the same for the loan. So we had to go back to the lender and, luckily we were able to work magic. We had a really good lender that we were able to get it all sorted out. But, for a day there, you don't know if they're going to make it to closing anymore.
Did it interfere with the closing date or their loan type or?
No. So since we were a week out, they were still able to make it work. So I guess he was still getting paid enough to qualify.
Okay. So his base salary.
Yeah.
Still, okay. But that is scary.
It's scary because if you no longer qualify.
Or don't have a base salary.
Yeah.
If you're commission
or
only.
quit your job and you haven't started your new job yet.
Oh, yeah.
Or if you go into a completely different field, doesn't that affect it? Don't you have to be in it for a certain amount of time?
And don't they call to check to make sure?
They do. And I can't tell you how many times we've called to do a quality check just to see. We just want to make sure that Mr. Smith is still blah, blah, blah. And they go, oh, no, he quit 2 days ago.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm like, just wait.
Don't make impulsive decisions while you're under contract. Don't buy. Don't go on a shopping spree.
Try to tell the buyers and you try to make sure everyone's on the same page, but stuff happens.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And they're so excited.
Yeah, they are. And that was the worst part is like popping that happy bubble. And it's like, well, no.
Well, now you might lose everything.
Yeah. Now we're going to have to refigure this out. I've had one similar, a little bit different, and it's a different spin on it, is I had a woman co-sign to get a car for her son a couple of days before closing. And she thought it would have zero effect on her because he was the primary borrower.
Okay.
But it wasn't. It wasn't the case.
So that probably pulled up on the credit when they do that credit check?
Yep, exactly. They did a last-minute credit check, and when they did that last-minute credit check, it had popped up. So, even when you're co-signing for something, I mean, you're still taking on that, that responsibility and that obligation. So in this case, they actually had to refinance that loan to get him off, and he had to, get a higher interest rate because he was saving money by adding her. But he would have lost the house because they didn't qualify with that extra payment.
Yeah.
So yeah, even co-borrowing, it's going to affect you.
I have a story where my buyers lost their property, and it was not okay. It's a great story, a great example, but I still, to this day, it's the only time I've had something like this happen. It was a loan with Eleanor's husband. It wasn't an equity line of credit, but it was like with the credit union. It was a line of credit, like a credit card.
Against their house, though.
No, they didn't
No.
have a house. They were
It's just
first-time home
personal.
buyers. It was like a line of credit, like a personal loan.
Okay.
And they didn't realize that what they planned to do is they took out some of this money and they paid down some of their credit cards. And they were thinking, I might have a little bit of debt here, but I paid off all this debt. But then the other thing they did was they bought a car, which Jenny was just talking about. And so that threw their ratios out. And on top of that, that line of credit, I think it had like maybe perhaps a higher interest rate, or it was just they took out extra money to have. And so it ended up being a higher payment every month than their credit cards were. But anyways, the interesting story with this one was the seller had a change of heart. So the seller did not want to sell their house. And so while Steve, Eleanor's husband, was working magic, he was like, okay, guys, this is what you need to do. You need to,
Put
refinance the
$500 here,
house.
do
Yeah,
$300
you need to do this, and we need to do it before closing.
Right.
And then, we'll get the clear to close. So at the time, we had 2 weeks, right, in the contract. So now they have 7 days, but we had a 14-day clause. And the clock was ticking because the seller was adamant that if the buyer did not close, they were not going to extend.
And that happened.
And that does happen.
a
And
lot.
so usually they might say it, but they are balking and they're not serious.
Right.
And in this case, I just knew it was serious. And so we got them through all these hoops. They were the nicest clients in the world. They were wonderful, beautiful people. And they got the clear to close that 14th day. And so they could have closed on day 15. The seller exercised their right to terminate the contract, and they lost their due diligence money, their appraisal money, their inspection money. They lost everything. And it wasn't, a crazy amount like we had been seeing. It wasn't like $50,000 or anything like that, but it was a lot to them because they were first-time home buyers and they loved that house. And so I was absolutely crushed for them because they lost that house and they didn't do anything that didn't make sense. I mean, they weren't doing anything dramatic. They didn't go buy like a Lamborghini or, they were paying down debts and they were using a line of credit that they were like, well, we didn't open a new line of credit. So they didn't realize. And now Steve had told them to talk to him before doing anything. And so they hadn't thought of it. And so that was one of those stories where I was like, that was eye-opening. And, if you don't get that extension from a seller and you're just going off of, they'll just close, don't trust that.
No.
And so they handled it really well. They were wonderful, but I don't think they bought a house for a few years after that.
That's tough.
It is.
No.
That's really tough. We've seen several cases where people, what we try to tell people is tell us everything, right?
Yeah.
Tell us everything that you've got going on.
Deepest, darkest secrets.
Well, yeah, we're kind of like your attorney.
Some
Tell
people
us
might be
everything.
in
And then
there.
So
we'll
there's no
present-
surprises.
Yeah.
Right. We'll present the part
Right.
that we think that everybody else needs to know. I'm not saying we're hiding anything,
Right.
but we'll present the best case we can. But we have people that after we do a fraud check, which is a couple of weeks into the process, will go, oh yeah, I knew that was there, but it wasn't showing on my credit report. So I didn't think that it was important to tell you that we had child support in arrears.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
We knew that we had this problem
Yeah. And
with a collection or whatever, but we didn't, we knew that we had a car that had been repossessed because it had bad motor problems or whatever. but it doesn't show on our credit report anymore. So we
So
didn't
what does
think it
that
was a
show up
big-
on? You said
It shows
fraud?
on a fraud report.
Which is interesting. I did not know this. I didn't know
Me
that there was
either.
a fraud report that's
Oh,
pulled.
yeah.
I thought it was only credits.
Right.
No, there's a fraud
Oh.
report that's pulled, and it's pulled on all the parties. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
pulled on the agents. So if you've been involved in a transaction
Well,
that had
this
fraud,
is all new for
I
us.
know.
it will show up on the fraud report. If you've had a SARS, it was later found that somebody created
Wow.
an employment verification or something, and you were
How do
in
you
the
have our
transaction.
information to pull?
We have your license number,
Oh, wow.
and so
That's
it
like Big
is-
Brother stuff right
No,
there.
I want to
Pulled.
see mine.
And I've seen
I know. I'm like,
reports. I've
is mine
seen reports
wonderful?
in the last couple of years where somebody in Winston-Salem was involved in 3 transactions that ended up having fraud part of it.
Oh, wow.
And we were not
so
allowed
they
to do.
connect that now.
Yeah, and we couldn't do the deal, and I couldn't tell
you
the
can't
agent.
work with the agent.
I couldn't tell the agent, and I couldn't tell the borrower.
You can't tell the
So what do
agent what you
do?
see.
I'm not allowed to do that, and so,
So-
I had to say I'm sorry, but we've had some information come through on this file that makes it so that you can't. And by federal law, I'm not allowed to tell.
See, that's weird to me because I feel like the real estate commission should know about this. So you can't even tell the real estate commission.
It is reported through the SARS. Now it is reported, but when
It's-
you've had 3 involvements with
That's pretty
with
serious.
with it
What
doesn't
type-
mean you did it. It
Yeah.
just means you know people.
What type of fraud on? Because it say what type of fraud it is.
It's
for-
all different kinds.
Like mortgage fraud?
What we're it's all
Okay,
mortgage fraud.
okay.
So what we're typically seeing is somebody who is maybe in the last year, our company has seen people who forged W-2s,
Oh wow.
people who forged paychecks, people who
Pretty
forged.
serious.
That's
I
very
recently
serious.
saw
Isn't that
one where
jail time?
somebody
Yeah.
sent us bank statements that had First Citizens Bank on it, and it was in California. First Citizens did not have any branches where they had it,
Oh, that's
and the
crazy.
fonts were different. So it's just, if you were involved, it's going to get reported. Doesn't mean that you did anything. It just means, but if
Right.
you're involved in 3 cases where 3
You're
different
flagged.
cases, then you personally
That's
get
gonna
So is that
flagged.
person, does that anything ever fly under the radar then? Because, okay, so is 3 the magic number?
for the agent.
for the
yeah,
agent.
I'm sure that
So does that mean that every file that agent touches from forward probably was going to have an issue within what, a year or something?
it does go. I think it's a year to 24 months, but it kind of, it's something that a fraud report is pulled
Mm.
on every file. And with our company, it's pulled right around the time of the appraisal because it's pretty expensive
Mm.
to pull them. It's just another one that we do. So if you had something, my point was, if you had something that you didn't tell me about at the beginning and I don't find out about it
Yeah.
until the fraud report. Well, I'm now 10 days from closing, and all of a sudden I find out you've got a judgment on a piece of property in Virginia.
Yeah, and a lot of buyers, they'll start blaming the
Mhm.
lender, like, why didn't you find this sooner? Like, why didn't you tell us?
Why didn't
Right.
you tell me?
Right.
I know. I mean,
Just
it's kind of
tell me.
like,
I was saying earlier, we had a customer last summer that was going to get a gift, which is great. Love it. And he said the gift will be deposited like on the 15th of the month. 15 months rolls around. He deposits $10,000. We're like, great. Can we have the gift letter? He goes, oh, I decided instead of asking my dad for a gift, I would just get a personal loan from Ally Bank.
Stop.
And I was like, but I can't use a gift from Ally
That's
Bank
not the
Yeah,
same.
that's not the
because
same.
now you've actually borrowed 100%. You aren't actually putting any money
you're
down.
indebted.
Right. You can sell an asset, right? I've had people that have sold horses, mules,
Oh, horses, yeah.
air-
Mules.
airplanes. I had somebody at Portofino that sold an airplane. I've had people that sold their rims.
You just need
and
what, a bill of sale?
I need a bill. I need to prove that you owned it.
Okay.
And
Like an ad.
right. And sometimes people send me pictures or whatever, but I need to know that you owned it. I knew that, that it's approximately valued. Where I've had a problem before, the only time I really had a problem was somebody sold their grandmother's silver.
Oh.
And so validating how much the silver was
Right.
worth, how many pieces were in it, because she just kind of sold it. So we had to kind of go back and
Oh,
recreate
that's
that.
crazy.
But you can definitely sell an asset that you have.
That makes sense.
You can sell the bass boat.
But you
buy the
can't get a
house.
debt.
but you can't go into
You
debt.
can't
About
gift
those
yourself a
ratios.
debt and
Right,
call that
right.
a
And call that a
gift.
gift, right?
And you can't just pull out
I
cash.
gifted
I've had
myself
people,
high interest debt.
I've had people that just happen to have money in a safe.
Or how about like
See,
drugs?
and
You
you can't
get
do
any
anything
drugs?
about that.
You get any drug money where you're
Well,
like,
that's the point, is they're
You
trying to
gotta trace
prove
that
if it was
money.
drug money.
Yeah, because what if like my grandfather, he kept money under his mattress. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
what they
it
did.
has to like not cure, but it has to be in your bank account for
For
90?
then I thought it was 90 days.
60.
60.
Okay.
But it needs to be in your bank account. So we've had people that went to Vegas, took the cash, put it in a safe deposit box, went in every month, pulled $1,000 out, and then they wanted to count that as income, but they never reported that income.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's tough if you have cash
Mm-hmm.
and you're not reporting it and you just happen to have it because you are an electrician. Had that happen?
But what
before?
happens though? Okay,
I can't count that
if
as
you-
income
it's
either.
fine.
Okay,
house,
so
yeah.
I get it. If they have to, like you said, prove they owned it, show how they sold it, and what the value is. Because like if I have horses, if I'm like, hey, I sold my horse for $350,000, and it was like a $5,000 horse, like that would flag, right? I mean, it would have to be like some sort of
A
famous
reasonable-
racehorse
Yeah.
that like has
Best
some
training
lineage.
ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I mean, what's funny is I sent Melody a video of this horse that sold for $9.5 million. And so I'm like, oh, $350,000 is not unreasonable, but like that's not the kind of horse that I have or that Melody has had. We just have like recreational
Right.
horses.
Right. Right. Well, we were running into problems with crypto.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
a year ago, we had people that were coming to us going, well, I've got Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the last 6 months, Fannie and Freddie have really cracked down on what we can count from crypto. You basically have to cash it.
Really?
Really, I have to show that you had it. You have to cash
That makes
it.
sense though, because it's so volatile, right?
It is.
Like,
And so we were using it as reserve assets,
Yeah.
right? To show that you had
That
extra
you had
money
something in
after it
reserves.
closed.
Yeah.
But what you had, last Thursday and what you have today could be significantly.
Very different. So you got to cash it out, deposit it, then you can count. Is it still
Then
a
I can count
60-day?
No, not with that,
Okay.
because I
All
can
right.
show that you
where
had
it
it
came from.
and where it came from. So as long as I have a paper trail, I'm good.
Okay. That makes sense.
Oh, like this is so, it's so funny. You've been in the business a long time and it's like you don't really think about
There's always
all of the stuff. Like, you didn't know that people pulled the agents?
the fraud. No.
I'm like, wow,
no
I
clue
am
about
so
that until
glad
today.
I don't have that. I mean, because sometimes you do a lot of transactions. Like Melody's done, 89 or 86 transactions last year. She could have been involved in things that she had nothing to do, but it's a
Right.
numbers game. There are some
Yeah.
agents that do 10 transactions a year,
Yep.
and then there are some that do 100. And like, I can only imagine. Can you imagine if all of a sudden people just can't close with you? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm so
What do
glad
you do?
Eleanor
That's
said
a whole
something.
year of,
Yeah, what do you do?
work
Can you
or-
petition to?
Yes, you can.
Oh.
You can petition, and you can go to the banking commission, but primarily people go to the commission, the
Okay.
real estate commission.
And this is why it's so important to have a good real estate agent.
Professional
Yes.
at that.
And,
Yeah.
exactly, because there are all different, and, we are supposed to be, bound by our ethics and all that kind of stuff. But, that's not,
Always the case.
it's not. I mean, I'm sure. So have you done transactions where you could tell that the agent was just not
Oh yeah,
ethical?
absolutely. And
Yeah.
it makes you nervous. You double check all the information they give you. I mean, you do it no matter what, but you're a little more cautious and you can't trust that agent. You can't believe
Yeah.
them. And
Yeah. That's why a really good, solid agent can sniff out some things that don't seem like they are kosher. And, they can kind of navigate that. Even if it's better to err on the side of caution
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
than to just think it's not a non-issue. Because I'm always the one where I'd rather think the worst and hope for the best and be wrong than be totally aloof and not aware of anything that's going on.
But if somebody will tell us up front, I was saying earlier, just to confide in us. If you confide in us up front, then we'll ask for the fraud report immediately.
Yeah.
Like we'll ask for it immediately, like at the day of application or before, and we'll look and see what's there.
Yeah. Maybe there's something you can do to
That's
get
right.
it to work.
So
out.
if you'll just tell us,
Yeah.
then we can tell you, that's going to be a problem later. Or it doesn't look like it's going to be a problem. We've had situations where we thought for sure it was going to be a problem and it didn't show up. And we were like,
Good.
all right, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Glad we got through that one.
I know.
So, we're clear sailing going forward.
There's a lot that goes behind the
don't quit
scenes
your
with
job.
agent and lender.
Oh, it's a
So
team
many
effort.
moving parts.
Like 100%.
Every single
Yes.
person involved, especially in this market now.
Yes.
You need everyone to come
Absolutely.
together.
Well, we are going to wrap this up. And so we are going to have absolutely Jenny come on more often because that was a lot of fun. And
It's a
Jenny,
lot of
you have
fun.
so many transactions. So she has so many stories that she can share with us. What I do want to talk about next episode is I think that we should talk a little bit about Egypt.
Ooh.
Melody and I went to Egypt a few months ago, and that was exhilarating,
Mhm.
just like skydiving.
Just like skydiving, actually.
And so we will start episode 3 with Egypt.
Yes.
And we've just done so many fun things.
Yeah.
It's cool because if anybody wants to do this stuff, at least they hear a little bit from us.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us, and we will see you
Thank you.
guys next week. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the T.A.R. Life podcast with top producing mega agent Erica Anderson. If you've enjoyed this episode or found the content to be useful or fun, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Visit our website at www.teamandersonrealty.com. We are actively serving the Triangle area, Raleigh, Durham, Charlotte, and the coastal regions of North Carolina. If you're looking to sell a home, please contact Team Anderson Realty to set up an in-person or virtual consultation today.